typical New England day in March, right?
Yeah.
I want to thank Concord for its support to Ukraine this past year. I worked in Concord for about 15 years, and I saw all the flags this past summer, all the yard signs, so thank you, Concord, for doing that. You know, Concord and Ukraine share something similar. On April 19th, 1775, a battalion of Concord Minutemen and militiamen rose up and stopped the British, a foreign army, from taking over. They fought to free themselves for an independent nation. In March 2022, Ukrainian factory workers, office workers, techies, teachers, students joined what was called the Ukrainian Territorial Guard, the militia of Ukraine. The modern day Ukrainian Minutemen and women were hastily trained, given weapons, and defended their towns and communities as well as they could, and they did. Ukraine has been an independent nation for only 32 years. Today it's fighting for its life. The Russian Empire has ruled Ukraine for 300 years. Russia banned the printed and spoken Ukrainian language and forced Ukrainians to speak Russian, and attempted to eradicate the Catholic and Orthodox churches and try to blot out the existence of Ukrainian culture. They failed. 2 years ago, in a rambling 2.5-hour speech, Vladimir Putin talked about how there is no Ukraine, there was never a Ukraine, and even if there is a Ukraine, it shall not exist. Putin wants to recreate the Russian Empire, and Ukraine is a vital part of this empire. This war was started by one man, and only one man can finish it. Ukraine will not give up its right to exist. Ukrainians know too well what Russian rule means. Joseph Stalin took the wheat away from Ukrainian farmers, 1933 to 1934. 4 to 5 million Ukrainians starved to death as a result. Millions of other Ukrainians during that period in the 30s were either arrested, executed, including my grandmother, or sent to Siberia where they died. During World War II, 10 million Ukrainians died during the war. After the war, Russian communists attempted to crush Ukrainian spirit by Russifying it. They failed. Putin declared that this invasion was a special military operation to take the Nazis out of Kyiv. He expected his troops to seize Kyiv in 3 days. Didn't happen. Ukrainians outfought the Russian special forces, the Russian airborne troops at the key airport, and they were defeated. And they left that axis of advance. President Volodymyr Zelensky's grandfathers fought the Nazis. One of them died during the war. Due to his leadership, bravery, inspiring speeches, he's been compared to Winston Churchill. Vladimir Putin has been compared to Adolf Hitler. And I say, look in the mirror, Comrade Putin, and you'll see a Nazi. The Ukrainian people have suffered grievous losses in this war. 30 to 40,000 civilians killed or wounded. Over 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed or wounded. 13 million Ukrainians have fled their homes. Thousands of apartment buildings, hospitals, schools, you see that on TV, on CNN, and villages and towns have been destroyed. It's estimated it'll take 70 years to rebuild Ukraine. The Ukrainian army has fought the second largest army in the world to a standstill, thanks in a great part to all the weapons the U.S. and the NATO countries have sent. Has inflicted 200,000 casualties on the enemy. The Russian way of war is brutal. They have fired hundreds and thousands of artillery shells and missiles against civilian targets. Electric plants, and as I mentioned, apartment buildings and towns. 1 week ago, Vladimir Putin was branded a war criminal for the systematic kidnapping of over 16,000 Ukrainian children. His soldiers were ordered to rape, loot, and murder and torture civilians. His soldiers have killed and tortured and mistreated Ukrainian POWs as well. He has incorporated 4 regions of Ukraine into Russia. He has forced thousands of Ukrainians to move into Russia. All these are violations of the Geneva Convention and the rules of war. All this is an attempt to break the will of the Ukrainian people, and he will not succeed. Putin's poor excuse for an army has been defeated. Ukrainians have the morale, resilience, and the will to win. Putin is not a great strategist, neither are his generals. If he had studied military history, it would have learned a war really ends the way the perpetuator has intended. An army of murderers and thugs cannot win against a determined and righteous people fighting for their country, their freedom, and their independence. Page 3 is stuck. Bear with me. It's the rain. Listen to the motto of Ukraine. I'm sure you've all heard it. Glory to Ukraine, glory to his heroes. Vladimir Putin and his army will soon enter the dustbin of history. Ukrainians' fight for freedom will ever be enshrined in its history. While this war is 4,500 miles away from Concord, we in the Ukrainian community in the greater Boston area see its effects every day. We collect funds for Ukrainian relief. We collect medicine and supplies, send it to Ukraine. We meet refugees in our churches, and there are about 1,000 refugees, Ukrainian refugees in the Boston area. 2 months ago, a 6-year-old girl came to my church, St. Andrew Ukrainian Orthodox Church, in a wheelchair. She had no legs. Her legs were blown off during a missile strike. 3 weeks ago, a woman came up to Father Roman, our pastor, and said, "Father, would you please pray for the soul of my departed husband? He had been killed in Ukraine in action just a month before." My sister was talking to one of our cousins in Kiev today. She's a teacher, and she mentioned that 3 of her former students, all men, young men 21 to 22, have died during the war. Last month, I visited Ukrainian cadets who were training to be officers at the Citadel Military College. And on the way back to Boston at the TSA checkpoint, I saw a young man in a wheelchair with a green hat with a little Ukrainian flag. And I looked at him, and he was trying to stand up. And he had it was obvious, I could see his prosthetic legs at that point. And he was a Ukrainian soldier going back to Ukraine after getting his new legs. You know, I greeted him, I wished him well. So this is what we see. A Ukrainian grandmother said it best when she approached a Russian soldier, gave him a packet of sunflower seeds. She told him, "Put this in your pocket, so when you die, something good will come of it." So thank you for coming to this event today. In Concord, thank you for your continuing support of Ukraine. Thank you very much.